Stitch Cuties, I'm Brittany with Stitches of Love Quilting, and welcome to the video tutorial for making a setting triangle for your Spoolie Bird quilt using your foundation paper piecing templates included in your March box. So what we're going to do in this tutorial is first make unit 1, which is the larger pieces of our setting triangle. Then we're going to make number 3 and 4, and then we'll put them all together to get setting triangle 3, and you'll repeat the exact same steps in this tutorial to create your setting triangle number 4. Let's get started. So the first thing to get started, we're going to gather all of our material. So of course you have your pattern, and what you're going to want to do first in your pattern is read the before you begin fabric prep. So you're going to starch and prepare all your fabrics, and then you're going to follow these instructions to cut all of your fabric. So I'm not going to show you how to cut because we gave you really nice diagrams that show you exactly how to cut each piece of your fabric. So let's review the fabric. I have all my cute assorted colors. They're cut to the 2.5-inch square. Then we have the setting triangle pieces. So we have the cute jar fabric and then the little pink diamond fabrics. Then we have our white 2.5-inch squares. This is actually cloud. And then we have our little baby squares. They're 1.5 inches. These are going to be used at the end of our half square triangles. And then we have the larger cloud pieces per the instructions. So the fabric that you need to gather for the first step is going to be listed, and we're going to get to that in just a moment. That's a review of all the fabrics that you need for specifically the foundation paper piecing. So let's talk about the tools that I have beside me. So this is Brittany behind the camera, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, and I do my foundation paper piecing maybe a little bit slower than Julie, my mom, does. She's very experienced and does it quickly. She can do it without a light pad, and she goes quite fast. You, if you're a beginner, will get there. If you're a beginner or an advanced sewer, you're already there. In this tutorial, I'm going to go nice and slow, assuming that it's the first time you've ever done foundation paper piecing. So let me tell you a little bit more about the setup I have by me. So we have a list of all the tools that are very helpful to have. I'm going to review that with you. So we have the water-soluble glue pen, just a nice little pen that's going to be used to hold our fabric in place for the first steps and throughout a little bit of the process. Then when it comes to my rulers, I have my add an eighth and my add a quarter ruler. We're going to use the add a quarter ruler when we're working on the larger setting triangle pieces. Then when we get to doing our 1/2-inch triangle or half square triangle foundation paper piecing, we're going to switch over and use our add an eighth ruler. These are both really handy. Off to the side, you can't see in the shot, I have my Steady Betty and my Steam Fast travel iron. And then right here in front of me, I have, well, my applique pieces I'm going to set aside. I don't need those right now. I have my Caterpillar Glow Pad. This is an awesome light pad because you can move it around your sewing space. It is touch button, has 3 levels of brightness, and it's cordless. So right now I've moved it actually right over onto the space by my sewing machine because to me it's nice and easy to not have to jump up and down. So I love that this is cordless and I can move it around as I need it. Then I have my rotating cutting mat. This is the Fiskars cutting mat. I love it. This is going to be really handy to keep my piece as I'm going and rolling with my roller throughout the foundation paper piecing process. You'll see me use it as I'm cutting. Speaking of cutting, you need to have your rotary cutter, which I did walk away with, so I'll have to pause and get that. I left it over at my cutting mat. And then I have these foundation paper piecing templates. Now mine are printed in black and white. Yours in your kit are printed in color, meaning you have a nice basting line and outer cut line that's colored, and we reference those colors in the pattern. I quickly printed these for myself for the tutorial in black and white. So what I'm going to first start with is I'm going to trim these pieces and get them ready. I want to explain a little bit of the terminology. So you'll see on this page, let me make sure you can see, setting triangle 3, and it's unit 1. And then over here you'll see on these half square triangle foundation paper piecing units that you have ST3, meaning setting triangle 3 unit 2, setting triangle 3 unit 3. So these 3 pieces are going to make setting triangle number 3. And then the same thing occurs, we're making 2 setting triangles this month. We have setting triangle 4 unit 1, And then again over on this piece, we have setting triangle 4, unit 2 and 3. So what I'm first gonna do is just get my papers ready. And what I do is just loosely cut out. You do not want to cut on the lines because those are ultimately your trim lines, right? So I'm just gonna loosely cut these out. I'm gonna leave the label at the top because to me that's very helpful. That's why we put it there, right? So I'm gonna prep these pieces, and again in this tutorial I'm gonna go nice and slow and pretend just like you are a beginner. And you know what, even though I have been doing foundation paper piecing for a while, I still consider myself a beginner, and I still like to go nice and slow. If you've heard any of our previous tutorials, I always say in the background while mom is doing the tutorial, I'm a baster. And you'll see what that means. I like to baste my piece and make sure I'm right before I commit to cutting anything, right? And that just makes my life easier. So the setting triangle 4 pieces, I'm going to set aside. Setting triangle 3 pieces, I'm going to make a little pile. And then I don't have my little trash bucket. Mom always has, oh, here it is. Let me reach. Sorry for the reach in the camera, y'all. This is the cute little trash bucket that mom keeps by her sewing space. And then here I'm going to trim a little bit on the edge, and I'm going to label real fast that this is setting triangle 4. So I'm going to write setting triangle 4 unit 1 right here in the center. And you know what, going forward I'll put that in the pieces for you so you don't have to write that. So I have it off to the side and you're about to cut it off. So I'll change that for you in the future. And you'll notice you want to keep these words, right? It says outer edge, top left edge, bottom left edge. We're going to reference these labels when we're assembling the units 1, 2, and 3 together. So I'm going to set this aside. So this goes with setting triangle 4. So I'm going to put it with these pieces again off to the side. And I know I'm trying to keep my camera angle where you see everything really close. So I hope that you like that you're right up in here, like you're sitting at the sewing machine is the point of view I want you to have. So, and then in a second I'm going to write setting triangle 3 unit 1 on this one because again, I don't want to get those confused. They look pretty similar. So, setting triangle 3 unit 1. Just write that in. Again, in the future, I'll make sure that I have that labeled where you're not going to cut it off. So these are the 3 pieces we're going to start with. Now let's look at what fabrics we need to gather. So what I'm going to do now is go to step 1 of my instructions, and I am going to gather, and I'm working in a very small space to keep everything in the camera shot. So excuse me if I have to rearrange my little setup quite a few times. So I'm going to gather 2 6-inch cloud squares. Remember, cloud is the color of this white fabric. So I have my 2 squares right here. I'm going to gather 1 aqua jar square and 1 pink diamond square. Easy peasy. Right here. So I have those. And then, do I need anything else? And your setting triangle 3 foundation paper piecing template. Easy as can be. So I have 4 squares in this large setting triangle 3 unit 1 foundation paper piece. So the rest of all these fabrics I'm going to set aside, and I'm going to set my half square triangle units for setting 3 off to the side, and let's get started. So I want to point out, when you're doing foundation paper piecing, it's pretty simple. It seems complicated at first. I assure you it's not at all. You're always going to start with number 1, and then you're always going to sew on the line between the next number and the number you're on. So right now the first line we'll sew will be the line between 1 and 2. Then next we'll sew the line between 2 and 3, and then finally the line between 3 and 4. So this is a really simple block to make. I say that in hope that I don't mess up in the tutorial for you. So what I'm going to first do is grab my cloud piece. Now the cloud piece, you can't really say that there's a right and wrong side. I can't tell a difference, but if this was a print, what you want to do first, let me move these to the side. You want to put the wrong side of your fabric to the wrong side of your foundation paper piecing unit. So we're always going to have the printed side up. That's what we're going to sew on. And we're always going to have the fabric underneath this and work from the bottom. So for this, I don't really need my light pad. I just want to make sure that I'm 100% covering this. So I want to make sure that this square 100% covers everything within this, all the way out past this outer edge, right? So let me show you what my piece is going to look like right now. See how that definitely goes way past everywhere. So the method that we use when we're doing foundation paper piecing is what I call Julie's method, and that is working with way oversized pieces so you don't make a mistake. That to me is the easiest. So all we're going to do is turn this over, and we're just going to put a little bit, barely any. I did 3 little lines because it's a larger piece. We're going to put that glue right on the paper, and we're just going to put this together right here. Okay? Now, where we want to put our next piece is number 2 blue jars. So we're going to grab that fabric, and what we're going to do is put this right sides together underneath, and where I want to line it up, I'm actually going to draw a line just so you can see what I'm talking about. I'm going to turn my light pad on. I'll move my little cutting for a moment. And you don't need to draw this line. I'm just doing this so I can talk to you about it. So this line right here is where we're going to sew, right? And I know that I need to be a 1/4 inch past it. So I'm just going to guesstimate a little bit more than a 1/4 inch because we give you more than enough fabric. And I'm just going to draw a little line right here. And let me tell you what we're going to do with that line. Again, you don't have to draw that line. This is simply to help me illustrate what we're doing. So my white fabric is going well past it. Can you see that? See the outline of my white fabric's going way past it? That's great. Now what I'm going to do is take my blue jar fabric, and the blue jar is not directional. They go all different directions, so you don't really need to like worry too much about that, in my opinion. If you want to kind of be fussy with the direction of your jars, you're welcome to, but I'm not gonna. So on top of my light pad, what I'm gonna do is line that square, the blue jar fabric, up so that it's on that line. And that is going to give me way more than enough to cut off for my 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now, can you see that? I think you can see that nicely. Yeah, you can tell the depth right there. That's where I have my blue jar. Doesn't matter what it looks like over here. It can be as messy looking as you want because it's all gonna get trimmed off. Now before I sew anything, I'm just gonna do what I call a little flip test. I'm gonna hold my hands right at the seam line. I'm gonna fold it back, and what I'm doing now is making sure that when this is flipped out, all of triangle number 2 is covered past the trim lines and all the way into unit 3 and 4 really. So I like that. I have plenty of fabric left. I feel really good about it. So I'm going to commit to sewing right here. Now, as I mentioned, I'm a baster. So even though I checked myself and I feel pretty good that this is going to be the right seam line, I'm still going to baste. So on my machine, I'm going to go to I have a open toe foot on my machine. I have my stitch length set all the way to a 3 because again, this is a basting. And what I'm going to do is simply go straight on this line. Now I'm going to turn the machine down nice and slow, and I'm going to just make sure I have my needle right where I want it to start, right on this point. Now I do want to give you a caveat before we start sewing. If you wiggle on this line, it can affect your finished piece. So you want to commit to being pretty accurate and stitching on that line. So there is no shame in the game of going slow. As you will see, I go pretty slow. And I use the push buttons on the machine to control the machine. I don't think you can see it in the shot, but I'm just simply going to start. I might speed it up just a smidge, and we're just going to go straight down this line. Again, in this tutorial, I'm going to go nice and slow. In my head, I'm going to pretend that you've never done this before. And you know what? Even though I have done it before, I still go slow. And again, there's no shame in that. So when I end, you can see that my needle is right at that line. I am then going to cut my thread. And what this has done is give us a nice basting line. And the reason we use a basting really long stitch is that if for some reason I'm wrong when I flip over and my piece isn't covered, when I get out my trusted seam ripper, which I hope we don't have to use, then it's easier to take out than the actual foundation stitch, which is a 1.3 or a 1.5 between there. So what I'm going to do is test this, okay? So I'm going to fold this over on that line and take a look. Let me turn my little light pad on because I think that helps you see underneath. My blue jar fabric is well past this triangle, so I know I did good. So what I'm gonna do, now that I'm comfortable with it, I'm gonna go to my reel stitch. Now my reel stitch on my machine, you're gonna pick where it's gonna go forward and backward at the beginning and end of your stitch to lock that in place. And I'm going to take my stitch length all the way down to a 1.5. Boop, there we go. And exact same thing. I am going to sew right on this exact line, put my needle where I want it, and I'm going to slow it down for the beginning, hit start, and you'll see my machine is going to go forward and backwards for me. So you definitely want to look on your machine and see if you have a stitch that does this. Most machines do it. It's very helpful for foundation paper piecing because you always want to go forward and backward at the beginning and end of the line that you're sewing. And again, right now I'm sewing on the line between 1 and 2. So I have my cloud fabric and my blue jar fabric. And then I'm going to do one more step. Boop. All right, and then I'm going to, I don't know why it didn't go backwards for me automatically, so I am going to just manually go backwards. There we go. And this is, in my mind, Julie's fancy machine. I feel not quite as comfortable with it. Like I just cut my thread twice, but that doesn't matter. And my foot lifts for me automatically. My machine that I typically use doesn't do all those fancy things for me. So if you see me push redundant buttons, forgive me. So I like to trim my threads. Mom always taught me to trim your threads as you go. So what we're gonna do now, I'm gonna get my little cutting mat out. I'm gonna put it right here in front of me. And what I'm gonna do is simply fold my, so we have a sewn line, right? I'm gonna fold this back where I did my sewing. I'm gonna take my add a quarter ruler and this little lip that's on here, I'm just gonna butt it right up here. And then my rotary cutter. Everyone, stay with me. Let's see if I can get to the rotary cutter without getting tangled with my microphone. Oh no, everybody. Let's see if I can do it. I know this isn't exciting for y'all on the screen. Oy. There we go. I cut all my fabric over at the cutting mat before I started filming, so I apologize for that. Okay, so now my handy dandy rotary cutter, we're just gonna trim right here. Take this, put it in our little trash jar. Let's take a look. See that? That is a perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance. So then all we do is fold our little paper out like this, and we're gonna press it. I like to press from the other side. I flip it over, and with this little roller, this really makes your seams nice and neat, and you don't have to run to your iron multiple times. You certainly can use an actual iron each time. I find this is more than enough. And now, because these are really large pieces that we're working with, I'm gonna put a little dab of glue on triangle number 2. Just a little. Because to me, it's gonna keep my work a little tidier. You'll see when we do the half square triangles, I don't do that because the pieces are so small, you simply hold it in place. So now, where we're gonna stitch now is the line between number 2 and 3. So again, I'm gonna give myself a little cheater line. I'm gonna grab a pencil. I'm gonna go more than more than a 1/4 inch past this line so that I know I'm gonna have my fabric in the right place. And this is just a little technique I do. I don't know if it's a real technique. I mean, it's my cheater technique. And that fabric that we need in this instance for number 3 is clouds. I'm gonna turn my light pad on. I'm gonna gather my little cloud square. And again, this isn't really a directional fabric, but you would still want to put it right sides together. And what we're gonna do is line that fabric up underneath, right on that line, or approximately on that line. So can you see that underneath? I have my white fabric where it's going past this. And you can see, I'm like, oh, you know what? This might be better on an angle. So let's do that. I'm going to turn it a little bit. So I'm actually not using that line in this case. But that's where I want to make sure that when I fold over, I give myself plenty of space. So I'm going to fold, I'm going to hold and flip it. And again, I'm going to baste, but I want to see if I'm in a good spot. So you just hold your fingers right here at the top and bottom seam, and you're going to flip that piece over. Again, these are really big pieces, so I know it looks floppy. And when I flip over, I want to make sure that my fabric is passed everywhere, and it is. Nice. So I'm going to flip it back over. And if you wanted to, you could have it where I originally had it and have it on this line. It's still going to give you enough. But again, I want to be a little bit more sure of myself and go like that. Again, I'm still going to baste, okay? So I'm going to switch to my basting, take it up to a 3 stitch length, and let's baste. And if I end up being wrong, then it's a little basting stitch we take out, and there's no harm done. So just straight on that line. I wobbled just a little bit on that line, but I think it'll be okay. And then we're going to end right at the end, and we'll cut. And so what we're going to do is fold that over underneath, and we're going to make sure oh look, I didn't trim this line, you guys. Oh lordy. Yeah, I did. I'm good. I just have that much extra fabric. I thought I made a mistake. I didn't, everybody. So when you fold this over, let's see the white. Oh, we have way more than enough coverage. This is fantastic. So now flip my piece back over, and what I'm talking about where I got worried that I didn't trim, I did. We just have so much fabric to work with. It's great. I love it. So now what we're going to do is do our real stitch. So I'm going to go down to 1.5 and put my needle into position, and away we go. Again, it's going to go forward and backward for me. We're going to stay right on this line. We need like hold music, like sewing music when the machine's going. I don't want to speed it up because I don't want to make a mistake. So there we go, coming to the end. Boom, and then we're going to go backwards. Nice. Oh my gosh, the machine like automatically cuts and raises my foot for me. I'm not used to that. It's awesome. So again, I'm just going to check myself before I do my actual cut. You see, I check myself a lot. Totally, we're in the money. So fold it back. We're going to put our, fold our foundation paper piecing piece back. You're going to get your add a quarter. And this is a diagonal, so it's really long. Oh, my cutting mat. Minor detail, right? Did y'all see me almost cut on my light pad? I don't think Mom would have been happy because this one's hers. So one good thing about the lip is this is a long diagonal, right? So I'm going to be able to reposition my ruler no problem at all, and it's not going to affect my actual seam allowance. See? There we go. So look how much fabric you have extra. I mean, we're giving you a ton of fabric because, again, it's easier to have too much than not enough. So now we're going to flip this over, and we are going to take our roller. I'm just going to kind of finger press. Then I'm going to get my roller, and we're going to roll it. So you see, this is shaping up nicely. I'm pleased with it. And you can see I do quite a bit of rolling. Mom's always instilled in me that a lot of pressing is good. Now again, these are giant pieces to me. So I'm going to do a little bit more glue just to make my life easy. So already we're on the last piece of this particular setting triangle. So I'm going to flip it back over, and it's a straight line. I'm going to draw this line again, even though I didn't use it in the last step. I like to have it. And again, I'm just going more than 1/4 inch past the line I'm going to sew on, and it just helps me know underneath where I'm going to put my fabric. That's just a little step I do. You can totally bypass that if you want to. And it is pink diamonds. We are going to grab our pink diamond fabric. Again, right sides together underneath. Line that fabric centered right up. So this is what, can you see the line? See, my fabric is coming up right to that little line I drew. So we're going more than a 1/4 inch past the line that we're going to sew, which is 3, 4. And again, I'm just going to check myself. I know I have more than enough fabric, but it does not hurt to check. So I grab where my seam is going to be, flip it back, and we're totally good, I think. Perfect. So let's baste. Let's do a little basting. And am I centered? I want to make sure my piece is centered. Yep, looks good. So switch back to your basting. Take it up to a 3. And put your needle where you want it and hit start. There we go. Straight line on the line between 3 and 4. Ooh, I went 1 stitch past. Don't worry about that. That's not going to affect anything. Let me show you what I'm talking about. See my stitch? I did 1 stitch past that line. Don't even concern yourself with that. So now I'm going to flip it over and take a look. Oh yeah, can you see? We have way more than enough fabric. Again, thanks Mom for having us cut such giant pieces of fabric. So now we'll go to the stitch for our foundation paper piecing. Take that down to a 1.5. Boop, boop. And we are going to put our needle right in position and hit start. It's going to go forward and backwards for us. One of the main reasons we do that is when you actually at the very end pull your foundation paper piecing out, the template out, your stitches stay nice and tight. If you used a large stitch like a basting stitch, when you pulled that foundation paper piecing out, even though it's special paper, it would distort your stitches and you don't want that. So now push the button to go backwards. Like magic, the machine will cut and then raise the foot. Don't you love it? I'll put my cutting mat back in position. And you know what? I have not been trimming my threads. I've been so focused on not messing up for y'all. So I'm going to trim my threads there. So again, before I cut, I'm going to pull that over more than enough, just like we knew. So fold your foundation paper piecing back and grab your 1/4 ruler. And we are going to trim. And you can see I have a ton of fabric hanging out over here. I'm just going to leave it because we're going to trim it in a minute. So now we're going to flip this where my fabric is now facing up. Oh yeah. Get our little roller. And what we're going to do next is baste around the edge of this before we trim it. All right. I'm going to put a smidge of glue. I'm a gluer. I'm a gluer and a baster. There we go. The glue doesn't hurt anything. So, you know, I mean, don't use a ton, but there we go. So now, I know it looks crazy, right? We have all this extra fabric, but don't worry about that. What we're going to do now is baste on the inner line. So you have the outer line that's your trim line, and then just 1/8 of an inch in is a nice little area to baste, a line that you're going to baste all the way. So again, go to your basting stitch, take it up to 3, and we're just going to go on all 4 sides of that. And then we will trim. So I'm just going to start right there, and let's baste. Down all 4 sides. And this line isn't like crazy important. This is really making it so that when we connect unit 2 and 3, that the large pieces of our foundation paper piecing stay in place. And you'll notice the paper wasn't quite large enough for this block, so you're going to have to kind of like guesstimate where that little corner goes to. I'm going to take 1 more stitch straight. There we go. And now I'm going to turn it. I have my needle down when I turn, see? So I'm pivoting in the perfect little spot. And put your foot down, and we're going to go straight. Right down this long line. If you remember back to math, this would be your hypotenuse. some of the only math I still use from school. Somehow I need to calculate triangles all the time. So I use my hypotenuse formula. I think that's like a squared b squared c squared, if I remember right. I use it all the time, but now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm like, oh gosh, am I wrong? So one more little stitch there, needle down, we're gonna turn, and we're gonna go down the last line of our triangle. Right down, and I'm a little, pretty much accidentally almost just sewed on that little trim line, so I might cut the spacing a little bit, but again, this is just a tool for when we connect our pieces. Just keeps things tidy. Beautiful. We're gonna cut it. All right, so what we have on the front is actually an outline of our setting triangle, so let's trim. This is where you would probably want to go to your real cutting mat and use a real ruler. But you know what? I'm here with my cute little mat and this little ruler. So it's going to be what it is. I would go to I would use a different ruler for this trim right here, I would say. But it's going to be just fine. We're going to trim right along this edge. And I am going to make a note right here. I'm going to give myself a note. I'm going to write outer. And then here I'm going to write bottom right. And you know what? As I'm doing this next month for you all, I'm going to put the labels inside so you don't cut your labels off. Sorry about that. So just write that. Top edge, right. And then here I'm writing bottom right edge. And then here's your outer edge. I'll change that for the future months. Luckily, I haven't printed that yet. I almost started printing April's already. We're trying to get back to, or not April, May. Sorry, what month am I in? See, I don't even know what day it is anymore. Trying to get back to how it was before COVID, where we had boxes sitting on the shelves ready to ship months in advance. That's what we're trying for. So in this one instance, it's good that I haven't printed this yet because I am going to change that for y'all. And again, you have really big scraps. You can keep them for another project if you want. And again, right here where it didn't print all the way to the edge, you just trim out further, and then here, keep your ruler out further, and you're going to come out with that perfect point. There we go. Move my ruler up. And what I love about foundation paper piecing is that you end up with such perfect blocks, especially something like this where technically if you were just piecing it, it'd be bias edges, and that can kind of distort. But with this, not at all. Plus the basting helps with that. So a little more trimming. There we go. So now what we're going to do once I have this trimmed, we are going to work on our half square triangles that go with this. So look, my little trash bowl's filling up, but let's take a look at what we have. Can you see how perfect that is? And because we basted it, I don't have little pieces flopping around. But look at this perfect little setting triangle. I mean, that looks great, doesn't it? So you're going to leave your papers in. We're going to set this aside, okay? So now let's grab our pattern and see what's next. We are now on step number 2. We are going to gather 16 2.5-inch cloud squares, okay? Let's get that. I've already counted mine out to 2 piles of 16. So if I can just reach right over here, I have my cloud squares. And then I need 16 assorted print squares and 3 of my little cloud squares that go at the end. So I have my 3 little babies, 1.5 inch. Set those over here. And now I need 16. So I know that I have 12 colors. So there's 12, and then I'm just gonna pick a few random colors. 12, 13, 14, let's do a dark blue, 15, 16. These are all scrappy. They're gonna be different. I mean, it's the same fabrics every month, but they're gonna be all different. Now what we're gonna do is work with these strips that we're setting triangle unit 3 and setting triangle unit 4. All right, so let's start with unit 2. And let's just talk about what we're gonna do. This is cloud along the left side. Let me hold that where you can see it. Clouds are all the way down the left, and you can see our prints are all the way down the side. So I need 8 for this one unit, 8 for the other unit. That's why we gathered 16 total. What I'm going to do though, it's a scrappy quilt, but there's a lot of pinks, right? I don't want to end up with like 10 pinks right beside each other. So I'm going to lay out how I want it. So let's see. I'm going to make 2. Just going to start laying out. You see, I'm just going random, y'all. I just know I need 8 in each pile. Let's see, let's get a yellow down here. A yellow there. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason to this. It's random. I love it. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. I need 4 there. So now I have 8 in a row. Can you see that over here? Yeah, you can see. See, I'm just making sure I have 8 assorted colors in a row. So let's see, like right here, how I'm doing this, look, I ended up with 2 of those near each other. So I'm going to put 1 at the end. And let's see, that's looking a little dark. So I'm going to go green. And then let's do blue. And then let's do a pink. And then let's put a yellow. No, let's do this. See, once you start trying to make scrappy not scrappy, you get in your head. That'll drive you nuts. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So let's take a look. Totally random. Okay, so there you go. Don't stress too much about it. So I'm going to set 1 pile off to the side to use on unit 3, and this will be my pile for unit 4. I'm just going to pile them up in a nice little pile, and again I have my whites, my clouds. So the first one that we're working on is number 1 cloud. So I'm going to take this square, take a look, way more than we need. All I need to do with this cloud square is make sure that I'm covering this triangle out to my trim line. So you know the drill. We're going to get our glue, flip it over, and put it where number 1 is, and plop this down. So the first line that we're going to sew is between 1 and 2. Now for this one, we're going to take this add a quarter ruler, we're going to set it aside, and we're going to flip out for add an eighth. And the reason for that is, remember the other pieces we were working with were really large, so they can warrant and hold a 1/4 inch seam allowance without giving us a ton of bulk. This little guy, if we had a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way down, it would be like halfway through each triangle. It'd give us a lot of bulk. So then we want to take it down to the add an eighth, and that's going to give us a really nice little little less bulk in that. So where I'm going to sew right now is between line 1 and 2. So I'm just going to go a little bit past. I'm going to give myself a line. You don't have to give yourself this line. I just like to. And we give you so much fabric, you really wouldn't have to aim that much. And now I need a print. So I'm just going to take my first print. And again, right sides together underneath. I'm going to line this fabric up. I have it facing the wrong way. Did you see what I almost did? So we're going to put it, no wait, I have it right. Don't mind me. It's only a tutorial. So I have my fabric, your pink should be coming out, or your print should be coming out that way. And what you want to do, I drew my line on the wrong side. That's what I did, everybody. Goodness gracious. Y'all at home are probably watching this being like, Brittany, stop, you're about to make a mistake. And I was about to make a mistake. So scratch that line. You need to draw the line over print number 2. There we go. See, sometimes you just got to think it through, even if you're the one doing the tutorial. So now I'm going to have my pink print, or any print, lined up with the line that's going through number 2, and we're going to test it. If I take and hold there, look at that, I'm going to have way more than enough. So on this one, I'm actually not going to baste because I know that I'm working with such a large piece. So I'm going to go straight to my stitching, right? Hopefully I'm not getting too overconfident because I almost just made a mistake. But again, take your time. Once you do like 1 or 2 months of this block of the month, or 1 or 2 foundation paper piecing projects, it really becomes second nature. Well, except for when you're working with big angles. No matter how many projects I do when I'm working with really big angles, I do get nervous. And now I'm just going to go backwards, get our cutting mat ready. Look at that, sewing with no hands. Isn't that fun? All right, and so what I'm gonna do is test it before I trim it, because remember I didn't baste. But look, when I fold this down, you can see that my pink fabric is way more than covering number 2. So what I'm gonna do is put this on my cutting mat, fold my strip back like so, get my add an 1/8 ruler, butt it right up. That little lip catches for you nicely. And we're gonna cut this. Now, what we're gonna do is flip to our fabric side, gently finger press, then get your roller. Little roller. And I'm not gonna glue this step down like I did on the bigger ones because you don't need to. It's such a little piece you're working with. Now my next color that I'm working with is Cloud. There's some fuzz on it. Get that fuzz out. Right sides together. What we're gonna do now is go between 2 and 3. So let's put our fabric as if it were more than 1/8 of an inch past this angled line. And let's just go like this. We're gonna test it, hold it right here, pull over. Look at that, more than enough. So again, I'm gonna be brave and not baste. Hopefully I don't embarrass myself by not basting. And we're gonna go on the line between 2 and 3. So we have our fabrics underneath, right sides together. And we're just gonna go, oh, I got a little off my line. See, I get a little overconfident and I make a mistake. But we're gonna go with it. So let's flip it before we trim it. I'm gonna turn it down and take a look. More than enough. See how much fabric we gave you? You pretty much can't make a mistake, but I say that and then I'll make a mistake. So just fold your fabric back, get your add an 1/8 ruler right here, and give it a trim. Look how much fabric we're trimming off. A ton. But it's not being wasteful, it's being accurate. And then fabric side up, give this guy a nice little roll. It really just sets this seam so nicely for our next steps. Now what we're gonna do is go between 3 and 4. So we're gonna grab a print. In this case, it's this cute little aqua. And we're gonna go 1/4 inch or more than 1/8 of an inch past that line between 3 and 4. So again, you can have your light pad where you can see it. Right now I feel pretty confident guesstimating, but again, move this out and be on top of your light pad and you'll see that line perfectly. But we're working with pretty big pieces for a little bit of sewing. So again, I'm doing my 1.5 stitch length. There we go. Ooh, that turned out perfect right at the end. I love it. Now the machine will cut and raise for us. And now let's flip and check. And we're covering for way more than enough. So flip this back, flip your paper back, and let's cut our 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Again, bunch of random little fabrics are coming off. Then flip to your fabric side, finger press, and then roll. See, are you starting to get the rhythm of this? Hopefully you're just sewing right along with me. Now we're gonna go the line between 4 and 5. So we're grabbing a cloud. We're grabbing a cloud. That's fun to say, isn't it? And you're just gonna make sure you're at least 1/8 of an inch past that line. I always flip and check myself even if I don't baste. And we're good. So now right here, put your needle right at the end, hit start. It's gonna go forward and backward and forward. There we go. Hit the backwards button. Love it. And now before we trim, we're gonna check. Look at that. See how much extra fabric we have? Again, I love that. We're gonna turn it back. Put your ruler in place. And yeah, we're trimming a lot, everybody. Look at all that. You can save those scraps in As Mom says, scraps are never too small to save, and you never know what cute little applique piece you could get out of these fabrics. So now, just press it, flip it back over. Now we are to the line between 5 and 6, so we're at 6 print. And again, all of these prints are different directions. There's no like directional prints. So we're just going to go 1/4 inch past that line number 5. Or not necessarily 1/4 inch, but more than 1/8 of an inch. And we're just going to put our needle in place. Again, 1.5 stitch length. And we're going to sew across that line. Boom, I went just a hair past the line, but that's okay. See why I like to have all my little tools by me? It just makes life so easy. So now we will check ourselves. Pull that down, way more than enough. See, you start getting into a rhythm. It really gets nice and easy. There we go. And we'll flip back over. And now we're going to go between 6 and 7. Let me point something out. You're like, hey, 7 is cloud and 8 is cloud. Is that a mistake? Not at all. We're forming a larger triangle there, and that's what forms this design where you have that, the little points of the colors right there. So we are going to use cloud for the next 2 steps. So grab a cloud. And we're going to make sure we're past that angled line, nice and centered. There we go. And we are going to stitch between 7 and 8. Ooh, I'm going off my line just a hair. Not good. So this would put us at the halfway mark of this block officially. See, more than enough to cover. So pull it back and trim it. There we go. Flip over to your fabric side. And look, you're starting to see your little peaks forming, aren't you? Your half square triangles. Give that a nice roll. Flip it back over. Remember, we're doing 2 clouds in a row. So now we're going to line up with the line between 7 and 8. Easy peasy. And we're going to stitch. Again, I'm not basting right now because I'm working with such large pieces in comparison to what I need. So I feel pretty confident. However, have no shame in your game and baste if you need to at every single step. Because all that matters is your end result. And if you baste every step, no one's going to be the wiser. There we go. So now we're going to check it. More than enough coverage. So, you know the drill. Flip back. And you might be thinking, hey Brittany, you haven't been trimming your threads. That's true. I don't want to make y'all have to sit here with me for like 5 hours while I trim everything. But normally I would be trimming the threads as I go, like the little tails, just to keep it tidy. There we go. So now that was the line between 7 and 8. Now we're to 8 and 9. So now we're back to prints. So this really fun navy with like little cross stitch hearts and needles, super cute. All these fabrics are Lori Holt fabrics, super cute to work with. Always love her designs. One time Mom and I met her at Needlework Market in Nashville, actually, a couple years ago. She was just lovely, as you would expect. We kind of fangirled. We might have embarrassed ourselves. So we were waiting for an elevator. We're like, oh my gosh, Lori Holt. It's always funny. People do that to Mom. And I always like think it's so funny and love it. It's awesome for her. But then when you do it to someone else, you're embarrassed. But you just have to hope the person that's getting fanned appreciates it. So flip this over. More than enough coverage over onto that 9. So bend it back. And and trim. We're getting there, we're getting there. So now flip over, and look, now we're forming our little peaks that go the opposite direction. We're on to the second half of this. So now that was the line between 8 and 9, so we're gonna go 9 to 10. 10 is a cloud. So get your fabric, go past this little line right here. Again, don't hesitate to put this on your light pad. Draw that little line if you need to. Do whatever it is you need to make sure you're being accurate. But again, with foundation paper piecing, once it clicks in your mind, it really clicks in your mind. Boop. There we go. And hit my backwards button. There we go. Perfect. So let's check ourselves. More than enough coverage. So let's fold this back. There we go. And flip to your fabric side and roll. Don't you love this little roller, right? It's awesome, isn't it? And then flip back over. So now we're going to do the line between 10 and 11. So we grab a print. Make sure you're past that line. All right, and let's sew. See, we're picking up steam. There we go. And just straight down that line. I do one more stitch. There we go. And backwards. I love it. Don't you love this machine doing the cutting for you? So take a look. Flips out just right. So you know the drill. We're going to trim our seam allowance. Just like so. And then flip to your fabric side. There you go. Isn't this just so fun? I could do this all day. I love it. And now, so that was between 10 and 11. Now we're to 11 to 12. So we're going to grab a cloud. And we go past that straight line. Like so. And we give it a sew. There we go. So only a few more pieces. Oh yeah. There we go. And backwards and forwards. Then we are going to flip and check ourselves and then see how it does. Oh my gosh, perfect. Loving it. Flip back. Cut our seam allowance. There we go. Flip over. Give a little roll. Now we're going to go between 12 and 13. That means we're grabbing a print. We are going to go past that angled line by more than 1/8 of an inch. Nice and centered. Am I centered? There we go. And again, you can always put this directly on your light pad. I liked it a lot for those big angle pieces. Right now, I'm feeling good without it. Just personal preference. There we go. Just make sure you're staying right on your line. Up to the end. Let's do one more stitch. And backwards. I love it. There we go. Let's flip our piece. More than enough coverage. So, flip back and trim your 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Flip over to your fabric and give it a press. There we go. Now we are to the line between 13 and 14. So we're going to grab cloud. And we just go past that straight line. right there and over to the machine and give it a little sew. And backwards. So check yourself. Oh, perfect. Look at that. So much coverage. Flip back over. There we go. Nice little trim. And flip to your fabric side. Finger press and roll. It really does just roll it flat as can be. I love it. So now we're to the line between 14 and 15. So we take our next print, make sure we go past that line, centered, and we stitch. And then after this line, we're going to go back to the top where we started, and we're going to sew the line between number 1 and number 16. There we go, and backwards. All right, let's check ourselves. Yay, we did it. Flip over right here, and we're gonna trim. Then flip over and roll your seam. There we go. Now, we're going to go all the way back up here to number 16, and that is a print. So we're going to take our yellow. We are going to put our fabric into the 16 past the line. So see, we have our fabric where, can you see that? It's all the way up here past this line. And we are going to, I think I need to pull this way just a hair. So I want to make sure I cover down here at this point. And on this one, I'm going to baste. I've made it this far without making a mistake in the tutorial. So let's see if we can make it all the way, right? So I'm just going to put my needle down. And again, I'm basting right now, just as a check. There we go. Cut my thread. I just want to make sure that I'm covering. Oh yeah, wasn't that funny that I even basted that? Look at how much coverage I have. Perfect. So flip back over to your stitch, come down to the 1.5, and let's sew that seam for real. Then what we're going to do for the next step, we are going to baste just like we did on those on the quarter square triangle, the larger setting triangle, and then we'll trim it. And then we actually have, is it 1 or 2 cloud pieces to add on? We will find out when we read the pattern. There we go. So check it. Perfect. Flip your piece back like so. Trim that seam allowance. Flip it to your fabric side. Oh my gosh. I know, you're probably like, hey, it looks kind of crazy right now. I promise it looks amazing. Look at this. This is what you have right now, but you see all your beautiful peaks. Now what we're going to do, I'm going to put just a hair of glue right there, because when I baste, I want it to be nice and solid and flat. A little hair of glue right there. And what we're going to do is baste in that line. Take my stitch up to 3. I'm just going to start at 1 point. Again, your basting line is that inner line. It's 1/8 of an inch in from your trim line. We're going to baste on all 4 sides. There we go. Let's see if I can speed up a little. Woo! I'm cooking with juice. Oh my goodness. Ah! I went way past y'all. I can't do my machine that fast. But that's okay. It doesn't matter if my basting went past. It's going to be just fine. So let's reposition and slow that machine down. I thought it might be kind of fun to go really fast for y'all so you're not having to wait as long while I'm sewing, but I think maybe not. I think I have to just sew at my own little pace. And then we're gonna go straight down on this side. Y'all were probably like, Brittany, you have a runaway sewing machine. When you're doing this, you're just making sure, by the way, that all your pieces underneath are nice and flat. You don't want to have anything like tucked backwards where it's not supposed to go. Kind of hard to do that when you're going as fast as I was going. And then we're going to turn and do the last little basting line right here. Get back on my line. There we go. And cut. So now that's basted on all 4 sides, and on the front you have an outline of where your block is going to be. Let's do some trimming because I have not been keeping up with my trimming and it's driving me nuts. There we go. Get that out of the way. Boop. Trim down here. There we go. And let's do some trimming on the back too. See, I didn't trim, so I sewed in some of those little threads into my basting. So you gotta keep your work nice and tidy. Let's get that one. There we go. Should be able to pull that out. And then this little guy, this little guy. Now what we're gonna do is trim, and then we're gonna sew some cloud pieces on the end. Let's take a look at what we're gonna do. Let's read. Remember, we're on step number 2. There we go. See, doesn't it just like feel better to trim those? Yeah, it does. I was probably driving y'all crazy by not having it trimmed. Okay, so let's take a look. Let me move my thing. So, step 3. So 1.5 inch cloud square onto the end of setting triangle 3, unit 2, labeled 16, and 1 on the end labeled 15. Okay, perfect. So we're going to sew it on either end. So let's trim. And then on the next one, it only gets it sewn in on one edge. So again, I would use a regular ruler and mat to trim this, but we're gonna make do for the tutorial. There we go. And we're just trimming on that outer trim line. Again, now I would go to a larger cutting mat. But I'm not for right now. And it's gonna turn out all the same. Bunch of little scraps to put in my scrap bowl. Trim the end right here. And you do want to be accurate with your trimming. Trim right on that line. And again, I cut off the label now, so I'm going to write ST3 Unit 2 on here. And again, next month, I'm not going to make it where you lose your labels. I'm going to move those labels for you. I'll add additional labels. That was kind of silly on my part to do that for y'all. And then I'm going to flip it so I don't have to worry about that ledge. There we go. Trim, trim, trim. And now when we sew our piece on at the ends, I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance because that's what I'm used to sewing with, but then I'm going to use my 1/8 ruler to trim it to eliminate that bulk. So all we're going to do right now is take one of our squares, we're going to put it on the back side, just like so, and I'm going to sew right across here. And I need to go back to my stitch at 1.5. So we're sewing right on this last line. Slow my machine down, and here we go. I'm going to use the same foundation paper piecing stitch where it goes forwards and backwards for us. There we go, and backwards. There we go, and we're gonna repeat that on the other end. Let's take a look. Flip this forward, and voila. Do a little finger press here. So again, we sewed on this line right here, the line of 15, flip it out, take a look. I am going to trim a 1/4 inch. No, I'm gonna leave it at a 1/4 inch. I'm not gonna do the 1/8 of an inch. I'm gonna leave it. There we go, because I don't wanna have to cut through my paper. And now we're going to do the same thing down here, just line that square up perfectly. And remember, at the beginning, you starched all your fabrics really nicely. So you're gonna have pretty accurate and easy sewing, even though these little ends aren't foundation paper piecing, they're loose. There we go. Awesome. And backwards. And we're gonna roll this. So now what we're gonna do off camera, I am going to complete setting triangle number 3. And on setting triangle 3, we're going to add a unit. Let's see. You're gonna follow the instructions. You're gonna add a square to the end of the unit labeled 3 or labeled 16. So we're gonna complete this the exact same way. You're gonna sew one white square down here on this line at the end. That is step number 4. And then you're going to complete all of your setting triangle 4s. I'm going to come back though in a minute after I've finished this, and I'm going to show you how to sew unit 1, 2, and 3 of setting triangle 3 together. So let's pause for a moment and like magic be right back. Okay, so now we're back. We have all 3 pieces completed. So we have the unit 2 like so. We have unit 3. This is what I just made off camera. So I have 1.5 inch square sewn on my 16 line down here. And then I've gathered my setting triangle that we made, right? So what we're gonna do, we are going to take unit 3 and we are gonna sew it on to the bottom right edge. So what we're gonna do is put them right sides together. And what we wanna make sure we do is line these center seams up like so, and where that's going to be is essentially right at the end. So this piece is really easy to sew on. If you want to pin, you certainly can. Somehow I'm sitting in front of a sewing machine without pins. I have no idea how this happened, but what we're going to do is sew right down this stitched, this solid line. So again, I'm going to make sure I have my pieces nice and lined up right here. I'm gonna feel that they're lined up right here, and they are. Again, I would pin, but my pin cushion has gone away. And I am going to put my needle right down in that line. I am on my stitch length at 1.5, and we're gonna hit start, and we're gonna sew straight down this line. So let's see if I can speed up just a smidge. You wanna be really accurate with this seam. There we go. Stay on the line. So you can see right now we just went through the center. Did you hear my machine be just a little loud when we're going through all those seams? There we go. Coming to the end. One more stitch. And then we're going to go backwards. So now what we're going to do is take a look. How'd we do? We should have stitched through that line on both sides. And wow, can I tell you, I'm really pleased with that. See, both sides of that seam line are stitched through. So what I'm going to do is trim my thread, and we are going to roll this open. So I'm going to do a little bit of finger pressing here. Let's take a look at how it looks. Oh, wow, you guys, look at that. I'm quite pleased with that seam. I don't know about you. And then I'm going to press this open. There we go. So I'm using my finger, and then in just a second, we're going to go to town with our roller. Really pleased with this. There you go, and it's a little bumpy. Hopefully I'm not bumping the camera too much for y'all. We're gonna go open. There we go. And at this point I would press with my real iron for sure. Oh my gosh, look at that. That's looking great. So then there's only one thing left to do, and that is to line these up like so. So this is gonna come perfectly to the end. You're gonna have, if you look right here, see where this is on the top and this is on the bottom? Those are gonna line up perfectly. So you're gonna marry your seam right there. This looks great. And then we're gonna have that lined up all the way. We're gonna sew on this side. So we're gonna start, let's see if you can see that. We are gonna sew from this point all the way down onto that other piece. Now again, I would definitely pin this. I should have grabbed my pins, but we're gonna wing it in the tutorial. But for you, oh my gosh, you guys, my pins are right here. Okay, let's do some pinning. That's gonna make me much happier. And we're gonna pin right here at the edge. I'm gonna pin so that I'm not gonna sew over my pins. Let's pin this seam nicely. Can you see where I'm pinning? I'm gonna make sure I pin. See, I caught the seam on both sides. Real happy with that. Then in the middle, they should match up, and they, gosh darn it, sure do. Isn't that wonderful? That's a good feeling. Pretty much is how it always works with foundation paper piecing, because you know, you're sewing on a line. So I'm just sewing, pinning all the way down here. Let's do one pin right here. Can't believe the pin, y'all, the pin cushion was just to my left. Normally have it to the right. That's why I didn't see it. Only when you're filming a tutorial do you do silly things like that. All right, so we're really pinned up. I'm gonna sew from this line right here all the way down. So remember, this is the piece that we already have sewn on. So let's get to sewing. Boop, boop, boop. And I'm just gonna put my needle where it goes. I'm gonna slow my machine down. We're gonna have some significant bulk right here to go over this seam. So it's gonna go backwards. Again, I'm at my 1.5 inch stitch length. I'm gonna pull that pin back because I don't wanna go through it. Okay, maybe I'll speed up just a smidge. But this is a pretty important seam, so I wanna be accurate. There we go. Okay, now I can speed up just a hair. I'm gonna stop because you can see my paper's folding a little bit. So make sure you're not gonna sew through a pin. There we go. Get that little guy out of the way. So in a minute, when we're done with this, we're gonna press this seam open too, and we'll see our finished setting triangle number 3 that consists of units 1, 2, and 3. And then what we did with this one, you're gonna repeat that exact same thing to do setting triangle 4. It's easy peasy to do, and it really is addictive to me. I get really in the zone when I'm doing this. I quite like it. And then at the end of that point, we're gonna go backwards. Oh my gosh, you guys, I'm so happy I found my pins because I know this is gonna look great when we unpin it and open it up. So let's take our pins out. There we go. All right, the moment of truth. Let's hope I did good. So when we open this, oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I am pretty happy with that. I could have been a little bit better, but that's not bad. When it's all quilted, it's gonna be great. Oh my goodness, look at that. Can y'all see? I'm really pleased. So again, just like we did with the other seam, we're gonna press it open. And again, once you roll it, it's a little bumpy. This seam right here wants to stay flat like that. I'm gonna let it stay flat there, okay? Because sometimes your fabric, it sounds silly, kind of tells you what it wants to do. And then my little white square, I'm gonna let it lay flat down here too. So then this is done, and it's ready to go inside your project bag and wait till you're ready to assemble your quilt at the end. So give this a really good press with your iron. But ta-da, you have setting triangle 3. How good does that look? I love it. It's going to be fantastic. And just look, when you do your 1/4 inch seam assembling this, look how great your points are going to come out. It's just going to be beautiful. I'm really pleased with it. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you're not a member of Spoolie Bird, well, what are you waiting for? Join us. It's a ton of fun. And again, all these wonderful notions that we use, the add an 1/8 and add a 1/4 rulers, the Fisker's rotating mat, the great little roller, and then of course the glue pen are all available on our website, stitchesoflovequilting.com. Happy stitching!